I'm Dave Matson.
And I'm Beth Carroll. Tonight, News 40 brings you a special program, 2001, a year to remember.
From political battles to the war against skunks, our reporters and photographers have been very busy documenting stories over the past 12 months.
During the next hour, we will look at the events that shaped this past year. We start with the event that changed all of our lives forever, the attack on America, Tuesday, September 11th. It was business as usual at Logan Airport on the morning of September 11th. Unsuspecting passengers boarded American Airlines Flight 11 and United Airlines Flight 175 bound for Los Angeles. In New York City, the media networks led their morning newscasts with the Texas mother who was charged with drowning her children. Then around 8:45, there came word that it appeared that one of the Twin Towers in the city was on fire. Moments after, news choppers took to the skies, and this horrifying scene unfolded live on national television. A second jetliner crashed into the other World Trade Center tower as America watched. We would later learn the two planes were hijacked out of Boston's Logan Airport. The country was under attack. What was next? We didn't have to wait long to find out. At 9:30, American Flight 77, hijacked out of Washington, took aim at the Pentagon.
Thick black smoke billows from the National Defense Building. The West Wing of the White House is quickly evacuated, but the president is in Florida, is taken to an undisclosed location. Back in New York City, one of the country's most recognizable landmarks crumbles to the ground.
Never seen them black and white.
Trapped inside, firefighters, police, countless Americans, and citizens from all over the world. People walking to work run down the street for cover. At the same time, in the skies above a remote area of Pennsylvania, passengers on board United Flight 93 are trying to thwart yet another attack on America. Their mission is a success. The plane misses its target, crashing into Shanksville at 10:10. All 45 people on board are dead. 19 minutes later, more mayhem back in New York City as the second World Trade Center tower crumbles to the ground. Total time of destruction, just 1 hour, 49 minutes. Total lives lost, over 3,000.
On the streets of New York City, shock and disbelief. The bright lights of the Big Apple dulled by a haze of white dust.
Well, almost everyone knew someone involved in the terror attacks. People took to the streets, searching for loved ones.
News 40's Jim Polito made it to New York City right after the attack. Here's his account of what he saw at Ground Zero.
These are the images of 9/11 that will stick with me for the rest of my life. A shoe, maybe lost during a hasty retreat. A fruit stand covered in that white dust that fell like snow for blocks around Ground Zero, because even after crumbling, the buildings continued to burn. Then there was the constant stream of ambulances, which we quickly learned were carrying injured rescue workers, not victims from the tower. Have you seen anyone been pulled out alive since you've been here?
I haven't seen anyone pulled out alive yet. We haven't got inside.
That's Peter Coppola, a member of the Iron Workers Union that helped to build the towers back in the 60s. Now they're digging through the wreck in search of victims. Sadly, after the first 13 hours following the attack, there were no more survivors. Search dogs like Shannon found only remains.
I saw the elbow, and once she let me know that it was somebody in there, I stepped away, and they started excavating, and they put it in a bag. And
more stories like that one came out with the tired rescue workers who walked through our press village 2 blocks from Ground Zero. That's as close as photographer Luis Abad and I got. Considering what was going on inside, it was probably a blessing.
They were coming, and still coming more and more, and they were bringing body bags in, and it was horrific.
Less than 24 hours after the attack, authorities began the manhunt for those responsible. Part of that search took place back home. My colleague Jerry Gretzinger picks up the story in Boston.
Everything started, unfortunately, here in Boston when the hijacked flights left out of Logan Airport today. The investigation seems to have been starting here. As you said, I am outside of the John Joseph Moakley Federal Courthouse, where we're told, these are unconfirmed reports, that inside there is at least one man who they believe could be tied to yesterday's horrific tragedy that happened throughout the country. Now, earlier today, where that gentleman came from, 3 men were said to have been arrested at the Westin Hotel at Copley Square in the heart of Boston. It was right around 1 o'clock. Boston's SWAT team, state police, as well as heavily armed FBI agents went into the hotel.
I just hope that they get whoever is responsible for this and they execute them.
You're not scared right now?
No.
Authorities made the arrests based on credit card information. They determined the card used to rent the room was the same credit card used to purchase tickets for seats on the hijacked plane. After further investigation, the men were all released.
The families of victims were undoubtedly looking for swift justice of those responsible for the deadly attacks.
News 40's Susan Goodman recalls the victims from Western Mass.
8 of the 3,000 victims of the September 11th attacks were from Western Massachusetts, the hardest hit community, Westfield. 3 of its residents who grew up and attended the same high school would ironically perish together. 30-year-old Tara Creamer, a graduate of Westfield High School's class of 1989, moved to Worcester and took a job with the TJX company. She was on a business trip for them and was aboard American Airlines Flight 11. She leaves behind 2 daughters and a husband. Her father, former Westfield High Superintendent James Shea, says he will always treasure the time he had with her.
God gave me her 30 years ago. She's a great girl, and she's a great mother, and a great daughter. And I cherish the years that I've had as my daughter.
The plane Creamer was on crashed through the First Trade Tower, where 41-year-old Brian Murphy and Danny Trant were working. They were both on the 105th floor in the Cantor Fitzgerald offices. Brian had emailed his wife only 20 minutes before the crash. Danny Trant, a Westfield High School and college basketball star, called his wife in Long Island. He told her he was trapped inside and that he loved her. And most of the country will remember another phone call, this one made by West Springfield native Melissa Harrington Hughes. Television stations everywhere broadcasted her tearful goodbye left on the answering machine to her husband. She called her father next.
I wish we could turn the clock back to September 10th. We can't, and every day I just, we go on and I try to think about my daughter and all the pleasant things memories she gave to us, not only as a family, but as a community, and just hope that something like this never happens again anywhere in the world. That's all. Pray to God that it never happen again.
60-year-old Nicholas Humber, formerly of Ludlow, was also a passenger on Flight 11. Employed by Enron Wind Company, Humber was on a business trip to Los Angeles. 24-year-old Jean Roger, a flight attendant and graduate of Longmeadow High School, was also aboard that flight. At this memorial service, her family and friends remembered her as a friendly and loving young woman. The University of Massachusetts lost an alum and professor. Jessica Sachs, who graduated last February, was on a business trip and was aboard Flight 11. 33-year-old Christopher Karstanian, a computer researcher, was on the second plane that crashed into the World Trade Center.
While Susan reminds us of the people we lost, there are some miraculous stories of survival and near misses.
Jim Polito joins us now to tell us about a Longmeadow man who had a close call. Jim?
Well, Dave and Beth, there are literally hundreds of thousands of people who lived in and around Ground Zero. And while reporting from the edge of Ground Zero, I was approached by one of those people. He walked up wearing shorts, a t-shirt, and Converse sneakers that were one size too small. At first, I thought he was a homeless person. While that assumption was not very far off the mark, his name is John Schreier, and he moved to New York from Longmeadow about 10 years ago. Those clothes and small bag were his only possessions. Schreier lived in Battery Park, just 2 blocks from the towers, and could not get back into his home. On 9/11, he left his apartment to take the subway to work from the station underneath the towers. He's usually there around 8:45, but luckily on that day, he left for work early. He watched from the roof of his office building as the second plane hit and both buildings crumbled. In the days following the attack, he slept on the floor of a friend's small apartment. Now, John was not allowed back inside his apartment until last month, and after spending one night there, he had to move out because of the air, which continues to cause coughing and irritation. It took a week for my voice to get back to normal after returning home. And by the way, photographer Luis Abad and I would not have made it back home without John Schreier's help. On September 13th, we gave him a ride to his parents' home in Longmeadow, and Dave and Beth, without his directions, we would have never gotten out of Manhattan.
Jim, thanks very much.
All right.
Another amazing story.
Yes.
For other families, the turmoil was just beginning.
Operation Enduring Freedom was implemented, and the nation was, for all intent and purposes, at war.
News 40's Catherine Shepardson has more on the people in Western Massachusetts who answered the call of duty.
They are the people of our everyday lives, teachers, doctors, store clerks, even factory workers. But now they are all wearing the same uniform, those of reservists.
Okay, you're good to go. Thank you.
Over 1,000 servicemen and women at military bases in Westfield and Chicopee have been called to active duty since 9/11, making Operation Enduring Freedom the largest local call-up since the days of Desert Storm.
We've been authorized to call people up for 12 months. The partial mobilization authority that came when the president declared the national emergency actually allows reservists to be called up for a total of 24 months. So this 12-month activation could be extended another 12 months.
In the Air Force Reserve, Gary flies a C-5. And like many of his comrades, being called to duty involves another battle.
Now catch it. Show them how you can catch it.
Leaving loved ones behind for the holidays.
This is one way that we can contribute and secure our country.
And it's that sentiment that comforts men and women as they leave their families behind, knowing they are doing their part to serve our country.
There's still more ahead when News 40 special coverage of 2001, the year to remember, continues.